Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Ajua. It's another one of my similar but better series where I compare two or more fragrances that are reported to smell identical and let you know which of them in my opinion is a better alternative. From my previous video where I reviewed Arabiat's Bahia Garnet, which I spoke about highly because it's a very beautiful, fragrance. I had some comments, people asking if they could own Black Opium over Red and Bahia Garnet since it is reported to smell identical. I remember answering and saying you can own both, and I'm here to reiterate the fact that you can own both Garnet, Bahia Garnet, and Black Opium over Red. They don't really smell identical to me that much. The only thing they have in common is the note of cherry and then vanilla, and oranges. That is the only thing they have in common. But scent wise, when it comes to Garnet, it is completely different. The notes for Garnet includes cherry, mandarin, mango, pear, and bergamot. In the middle, we have amber, fig, jasmine. There's just marine notes. There's amber, vanilla, sandalwood, and then musk. Whereas in the case of overred, you're getting cherry, green mandarin, jasmine, orange blossom, black tea, vanilla, coffee, and then patchouli. I don't smell anything coffee or the Black Opium DNA in Bahia Garnet. It doesn't necessarily remind me of that, except the cherry notes that they have in common. That's, sort of binds them together. Garnet is basically an exotic, erotic feel. That is what it gives me. Very sexy fruit. It doesn't give me that strong vanilla of Black Opium and the coffee. It gives me more of a very erotic, sensual, sexy, bold, loud, spicy, fruity, a little boozy with the cherry, very sweet, very jammy, very syrupy, not in a medicinal way. It doesn't give me medicinal cherry, but very syrupy and thick. And the best description I can give it is a very sexy, erotic, and sensual feel. But it's fruit. It doesn't necessarily give me tropical, like a tropical vacation, maybe nighttime tropical vacation vibes, but it's more dressed up in my opinion. It's a little dark, a little mysterious, a little more bolder than the overred in my opinion. I went in store just to be able to reacquaint myself with overred. And what I can say is overred is good, but it dries down to the original Black Opium to the extent that you might not even need both if you are someone who is trying to really cut down on your redundancy. So I would say you can own both Garnet and overred. They are not the most identical. They have similarities here and there, but even those ones you can ignore them. You can layer those two fragrances together. And when I layer Garnet with something else, I have just a small one left here. I tried layering it to the original Black Opium. It overtook Black Opium because it's stronger. It's much more decadent, much more stronger, much more louder than the Black Opium and then even the overred. Overred is beautiful. You're getting the additional cherry, with the original Black Opium DNA, but it is nothing like this one. There's nothing like Garnet to my nose from my wear test. I doused myself. I went into store, doused myself, and then had spent the whole day with overred. It didn't give me Garnet in any way. You actually can own both, and that is going to be my comparison. For those who have been wondering, I can see where you might assume maybe is it because it's on Fragrantica, or I'm even wondering if people who say they have both Garnet and overred and they smell it. I don't know because it doesn't smell identical to me in any way. It's most likely you've smelt one and you have not smelt the other, and probably based on some of these things based on hearsay. But from wear test experience and experimenting and testing these two fragrances, they don't smell identical and you can own both. Arabiat Bahia Garnet is apparently inspired by Summer Hammer, and as I discussed in my previous video, I haven't had my nose on it, but if you are supposed to compare it to overred, it is nothing like it. You can own both, and that is going to be my take on those two fragrances. The next set of fragrances are going to be Infinite Rose from Maison Alhambra. I've owned a full bottle of Infinite Rose in the past. I remember speaking highly about Infinite Rose as a good interpretation or dupe of Initial's Atomic Rose. I no longer have it because I have finished using mine, and I got my hand on French Avenue's Rose Explosion Extrait de Parfum. And this is a very beautiful, identical smell to Infinite Rose. I'm trying to do this comparison based on, my sensory memory I don't. I wish I could have a decant of Infinite Rose, but I don't have it. No, but I can vividly remember how it smells. It smells very identical to this and the original Atomic Rose. These are very beautiful, candied bergamot roses. They both have Bulgarian and Turkish rose. So very light, pretty rose, powdery with some very heavy, thick vanilla, very, soft and feminine and light and airy and also thick at the same time. What I can say about this is the fact that this is extract de parfum, and I can confidently recommend this as a very long lasting fragrance. If you're looking for performance, you're getting it from this one. But this one is very loud, it's quite loud. When you spray it, it lingers, it overtakes a lot of things, it fills up a room. It's just a very loud but pretty, not screechy or obnoxious in a very annoying way. It's a loud, bold, atomic rose interpretation. It is super long lasting. This is the true definition of extra de parfum, as compared to some that would say it is extra de parfum and it's not. This one gives you that extra strength, you know, that extra potency, that extra long, long lasting power, that extra expressiveness, that extra beastly. It gives you that extra. If you are looking for performance, you will find it in this one. I would say Infinite Rose was good, but I feel this one gives me a little more when it comes to the performance. If I remember rightly. You can go for both of them, but to me, if you have the option of going for a Rose Explosion from French Avenue, I think you should go for it. I'm not saying you should go for Rose Explosion because I now have it, and I'm done with Infinite Rose. I feel like from my scent memory, this one, that Infinite Rose gave me a very beautiful scent, but I think this one is a little more amped up. I feel this one is a little more stronger than Infinite Rose. I owned Infinite Rose for over a year, was beautiful while it lasted. It was amazing. I highly recommended it. I would still recommend it if you have the option to pick it up. But I would say if you have the option to go for Rose Explosion, go for this one rather because it gives me a little more than I found in Infinite Rose. You can own both, if you are that extra and then you can be layering it, but if you just want to be one and done, I think you should go for Estrella de Parfum Rose Explosion from French Avenue. It's a very beautiful, sweet, floral, rose, candied bergamot, vanilla, that sort of feel. That's Delina-esque, but a little more. I think I like this DNA a little more than the original Delina. Similar family, but this one feels more intense, a lot more rosy, a lot more vanillic, Yeah. So, and a little more candied. So it's a very beautiful scent, and that is going to be my comparison of those two fragrances. I mean, yeah, you don't have to own both fragrances because they are good, but between the two, I would go for Rose Explosion by French Avenue. Amau's Perla d'Or is being marketed as a clone to Beach Walk by Replica, and that is a fragrance I haven't had my nose on. But as soon as I sprayed Perla d'Or from Amaf, it immediately reminded me of Valaya from Parfum de Mali. It gave me a Valaya with a hint of Tilia from the brand. What's the name? Marc Antoine Barrier, that is it gives me like a combination of these two fragrances, Valaya and then Tilia, but more on the Valaya side. There is something about Perla d'Or, there's something about it that reminds me of that linden blossom or lime blossom feel in Tilia, but it dries down 95% to Valaya from Parfums de Mali. It gives me that feel, that same fruity, musky, woody feel is what I'm getting from Perla d'Or from, Amaf. I wouldn't be able to give the exact similarity between that and Beach Walk, but what this one gives me for the most part, almost negligible difference is going to be Valaya. At the opening, it's not as strong as Valaya. You get that sort of linden feel, and then at the dry down is where you get 100 complete, Valaya vibes, the woody, that peachy sort of feel, the musk, the heavy ambroxan sort of feel. That is where they are the most similar to me. I feel like if you own Valaya or Delilah Blanc from Maison Alhambra or even Mystic Bouquet and the likes, you don't necessarily need Perla d'Or. It gives me a very similar feel. But if you want that sort of Tilia linden blossom feel, slightly, maybe about 20-30% of that with 70% Valaya, then you might want to try Pelador. I have never been a fan of Valaya or even none of the dupes. So I don't own a dupe of any, a full size bottle of the dupes of Valaya, because I feel like I wouldn't utilize it as much. I don't own Mystic Bouquet. I don't own Delilah Blanc or any of that. I have several decants and samples of them. But if I was supposed to go for a full bottle of something that is quite similar, I think I would have gone for Pella D'Or, because not only does it give me that Valaya vibes, it gives me a hint of that Tilia, and Tilia is a fragrance I struggle with. There's something about that linden blossom that I feel is a little too much and it's so peculiar, but it's so dialed back in a way in Pella D'Or to the extent that I enjoy it with that combination, Tilia, Valaya combination. Even those two fragrances are reported to smell identical. I see the similarities between Tilia and Valaya, but I think Valaya is on its own, Tilia is also on its own in some instances. But that mix of the two, with Valaya being more and Tilia being the less, concentration in Pella D'Or, gives me a very beautiful vibe. It's less musky, it's less woody, it's less, it gives me that vibe. So if I was supposed to go for anything around that region, it would have been Pella D'Or from Amalfi. It gives me a cross between Tilia and then Valaya, but more like Valaya at a dry down. But I like how this one is done. It's supposed to have the note of coconut. I don't smell anything creamy, coconutty feel. It doesn't necessarily give me anything tropical. It's a very beautiful, woody, musky, floral, fruity scent, just like Valaya. And then that linden is what I'm perceiving from Tilia. So to me, if you love Valaya, you most likely love Pella D'Or. If you love Tilia, you most likely love this one, but it's more like Valaya in a very small concentrated dose of the Tilia. And that is going to be my comparison. You don't need this, you don't need Pella D'Or and then Mason Bouquet, Delilah Blanc, or any of the several dips. You don't need both. But if you have not picked any, just like myself, if I was supposed to go for any of them, I think Pella D'Or would have been my option, just because I get something a little unique with that Tilia vibe. And I like how it is dialed back here in Pella D'Or. And that is going to be my comparison of these three fragrances. And the last two fragrances are going to be Portrait Oud from Arabiat, known to be inspired by Alexander II by Zejov. I'm going to compare it to Valori's Asgardian II. And this is the dupe. Just look at it, the packaging, very identical to the original Alexandria II. This is the original one, and this is the dupe. So illegal to have these two. It gives me like copy to the T in an almost illegal way, Yeah, so this is Asgardian from Valor or Valori, and this is Portrait Oud from Arabiat. And I've already discussed this one as a very good interpretation of Alexander II, just that it's much more lighter, like a more everyday wearable, lighter version of Alexander II. It's a very good interpretation, maybe around 85%. It didn't get it like 100%, maybe 85 to 90%. It's not as heavy. I don't get that intense palisandre rosewood. I get everything, but it's not as intense when it comes to Alexander II. But it's going to remind you of that. You're going to get the same experience, almost an identical experience as Alexander II. In the case of Asgardian II, it's identical. I get it dries down to Alexandria. It dries down to Portrait Oud. The most significant difference is the opening. The opening for Asgardian is a lot more animalic, a lot more funky, or the barnyard. There's a bit of barnyard funk with the agarwood that is used here, whereas the agarwood in this one and the original Alexandria feels a lot more cleaner, and a lot more westernized. But in the case of Asgardian, it gives me more of a Middle Eastern take on Alexandria, especially at the opening. It gives me that funk, that barnyardy agarwood. I get that agarwood a lot more than woods. So in the case of this one, you're getting more agarwood than woods, whereas in the case of Portrait Oud and the original one, you're getting that very polished rosewood in a hint of that wood. It's the dry down that gives me the most similarity. The dry down of Asgardian gives me like it's like a dead ringer to Alexandria and even portrait wood. That same lavender, rosewood, feel, it gives me that at a dry down. But the beginning is quite different. It starts off a little rough around the edges. The blend is not the best when it comes to this one, especially at the beginning. I've had this for a couple of weeks, so I'm trying to let it sit for a while. But it's super long lasting. It's a very beautiful interpretation. But this one is about 70%, in my opinion, especially at the opening. The opening is not going to remind you immediately. It's going to remind you faintly. If you are squinting to find Alexandria, you'll find it. It's a dry down that gives you that beautiful woody lavender, florals. That is what you're getting at the dry down. Overall, it's a very beautiful scent. If you love your oods and your woods, woods and oods, you're going to love this one. And this is like the much more safer one. This one is a little less skunky, very identical to the original one. But when it comes to this, is the opening that sort of gives it a different direction with that funky, woody, sort of Middle Eastern, twist. But the dry down gives you a similar feel as portrait wood, and then it's going to remind you of the original Alexandra II by Zezhov. So these are amazing fragrances. I think you can own, not necessarily, you don't need to own Asgardian and portrait wood just because the dry down is going to give you portrait wood, and Alexandria. The dry down is going to give you that, but the opening is quite different and quite intimidating for people who are not used to Middle Eastern oods and a bit of funk. The opening is going to intimidate you a bit, and probably even throw you off. But is there after the second, third minute, it begins to dry up and you're getting those powdery, beautiful florals that is coming from Alexandria and the musk and the woods. Yeah. So Asgardian is good, but I think the most similar is going to be portrait wood, which is about 85-90% Alexandria. This is going to give you about 70% Alexandria, but it's still a very good buy in my opinion, if you ask me. So these are, I think, 8 or 9 or 10 fragrances I wanted to compare today. And I hope this video found you also. Let me know what you think in the comment section if you have any of these and you have tried them yourself or you have compared them, yourself. And that is going to be it for today. And I hope this video found you also. Please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up and I hope to see you in my next one. Take care. Bye bye.